What's crack lacking? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know so, and we're back again, once again with another video. We're talking about the Green Bay Packers. Gonna give you all a season preview. So we're gonna take a look at the roster, look at the schedule. I'm gonna give you my starters, or at least who I think is gonna garner the most snaps, and I'll give you an overall prediction on how I think they're gonna do in 2020. Go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. That's always much appreciated, much obliged. But without further ado, let's go on and get into the dang thing. We're gonna first start by looking at the roster here. And Aaron Rodgers, he's elite, and he showed it at times last year. Really, he was kind of, I feel like, a victim of some of the play calling. They tried to incorporate more play action, and it feels like they're gonna do that again this year with some of their with the addition of AJ Dillon, who was a bit of a, I think for all intents and purposes we could say it feels like they whiffed on the draft. Yeah, so adding AJ Dillon was kind of a head scratcher. I think that was their second round, and then they went with Josiah DeGuara, who I was pretty high on, but not in the third round. I'm pretty sure that's where it went. Let me go ahead and confirm that real quick. But I think they're gonna be using him kind of like it was third round. Wow. But they're gonna use him kind of like a fullback, kind of like you kind of see with Kyle Juszczyk. I'll probably butcher that name. San Fran's fullback. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife, able to catch out of the backfield. And I think actually this really does, because the guy's pretty athletic. He runs pretty good routes. He was pretty good tight end there at Cincinnati. As far as a blocker, I think you give him a better chance at blocking as a fullback, but that's kind of a position that's being extinguished. I don't know. It's going into extinction in the NFL. So yeah, and it was kind of the head scratcher with AJ Dillon, just because you have Aaron Jones, who was actually really darn good last year, and then Jamal Williams, who was very good in the pass game. And then they also added Patrick Taylor Jr., who's actually pretty solid in his own right. So it was the draft. Like we could harp on the draft. I got videos where I harp on the draft. You could just check those out if you want. They didn't add really anything in receiver. You added Devin Funchess. He didn't even play last season. He's a possession receiver. That's about it. So Devontae Adams, he really doesn't have a true number two on the other side of him. You could say Alan Lazard, who flashed at times last year as a vertical threat. MVS, who we expected big things last year and didn't really come to fruition. Geronimo was already off the team. I think he went to Detroit. Not positive. You could say Kumaro, but let's be honest, St. Brown. So really, I think you got a three horse race here with Funchess, MVS, and Lazard for the number two. I don't think we'll be seeing too much as far as like three wide receiver. I mean, we should see a decent amount, but it looks like they're really moving towards at least I would assume deploying DeGuara a bunch. And then at tight end, of course, you got probably Mercedes Lewis. I mean, maybe Jay Sternberger, who they drafted the year before, who was actually a pretty good intermediate threat for the Aggies. So we might see a little bit more of him. But I don't know, man. The offense just doesn't feel changed. It feels a little bit the same. You probably got a little worse at right tackle with Ricky Wagner, but I mean, he was coming off. It was just a weird time for him in Detroit. I think he'll play a lot better here in Green Bay. Billy Turner was probably the weakest link on the offensive line, but by no means was he bad. He was actually pretty average. Corey Lindsey. You got Elgton. I'm never gonna get that right. Jenkins, the rookie from last year, who played pretty darn well, and Bakhtiari, David Bach, who's actually one of the best pass blockers in the league. kind of had a down season last year, but by no means he was still one of the best, one of the better tackles and left tackles in all of football. So I would take that at, yeah, I won't take that too serious. They add Lane Taylor. He's coming back after I think he was put on IR pretty darn early in the season, maybe after week 3. And then they drafted a bunch of guys, especially late. Jake Hansen, who penalty problems galore. John Royan out of Michigan, who I thought was pretty solid. They drafted this cat from Indiana. So they didn't do anything really, I think, to make this offense better this year. They're really kind of rolling in with a bit of the same. But then again, they were still a pretty darn good team last year, and a large part of that was their defense. Let's actually get to the defense, because there's a little more excitement there. I think I don't know, the offense just seems so bland. I mean, you might disagree with me on that. It's unchanged. You knew what, like, everyone knew what the big weaknesses were probably going to maybe addressing right tackle. They did that, and getting someone to play across from stinking Devontae Adams. They didn't do that. So on defense, they have one of the scariest pass rushing duos with Preston Smith, and Zadarius Smith. Zadarius Smith, the guy you could stand up or have him put his hand in the dirt. Very, very nice. Now, this team was kind of unusual last year, because they were among the top 5 in teams that played the most percentage of sub packages. Their linebacking, or in terms of their linebacking core, you had Blake Martinez, who had over 1,100 snaps, and then after that, the next linebacker had 300. After that, 69. Nice. But they don't really utilize two linebackers too often. So I don't think we're going to see Burks too much this year. Christian Kirksey, by no means I think is he an upgrade. I love Kirksey, but I don't think he's an upgrade over Blake Martinez. If so, by not too much. He's not exactly a coverage guy, but they did do something in the draft that I thought was interesting. Kamal Martin out of Minnesota. He was a later round pick, but this guy, he's not really a true linebacker. He actually played a lot in the slot, kind of similar to Davion Taylor, who's probably the more popular name coming out of Colorado. So this is a guy that I think he will probably see the field a lot. He's listed at linebacker, but this guy probably can probably slip into the box if they need him to, and if they really want to, like, he can be like a dime corner. If that makes sense. They could play him on the outside in 4 wide receiver sets. So I think if we're looking at all their linebackers here, that's the name I expect to actually see a ton of playing time, because just you can utilize him in more inventive ways. As far as the because I mean they did utilize their, like, they would come on often with maybe 3 edge rushers, just because the defensive interior has kind of been a letdown for him outside of Kenny Clark. So you'd see like Fackrell saw a lot of snaps last season. I think he saw actually more snaps than did he? No, never mind. Oh no, yeah, he saw more snaps than any of the other. Then you had Laurie at 700. Then you had Kenny Clark, obviously, there at 900 himself. But after that, none of the other defensive linemen saw more snaps than Fackrell. So maybe we see Rashawn Gary get more snaps this year. Keep in mind they let Fackrell go. Gary, he was a first round pick. He saw like 250, I believe, 256 snaps last year. So maybe they expand. Well, hopefully he would expand his role today, his role this season, because it looks like much of the same this season as far as the defensive line. You got Kenny Clark, who's a banger, and then Dean Lowry, who's coming off actually a pretty down year, and then you got Kingsley Kiki, who I believe is actually, could be thinking of the wrong guy. Got it all figured out. So Kiki was having trouble staying healthy last season, and he actually ended up only seeing 101 snaps. I mean, he was available for much of the year, but he was battling injury. And then you had Travius Adams, who just didn't play well. He actually was pretty darn bad. He was among the league worst in terms of against the run, and he provides little to no pressure, 2 pressures off of 206 snaps. So, I mean, you could maybe make a case for Tyler Lancaster, who actually was the guy right behind Fackrell. So maybe you'll see Gary really just take on Fackrell's role, and then they'll keep Lancaster a bit of the same. He actually saw a dip in production this season, but I mean, for the most part, for the most part, he's been one of the better run defenders in the league. I say better as above average, you know. So if I'm thinking straight, we're probably gonna see Dean. We're gonna see Lowry, Clark, Smith, Kirksey, Smith. Obviously, I mean, and then it would be like maybe Gary, and then like I said, Kamal Martin, man, he's kind of the wild card here. Outside of that, I think brought in Jonathan Garvin, but I don't think he has the size to play on the line, so he's probably going to be a pass rusher as well. Outside of that, they don't have guys playing on the line. It's really just Lancaster and then Adams and Kiki. So, we'll see. Secondary, I think secondary will be fine. Darnell Savage is a monster. I said he was coming out of the draft. Adrian Amos, very underrated, very good. So is Alexander. Kevin Keene, he's solid at number 2. We're probably going to see in the slot Sullivan. He actually played a little bit there last season. I think specifically he actually had a lot of duties, but he did split time in the box and in the slot, because I mean, you're gonna have to replace Tremont Williams, who, I mean, what was his snap total last year? 822. So yeah, he's likely to take on that role. I really don't see anyone else that could. You want to make a case for Josh Jackson? He's just been a bust. I think he only saw 100 and some snaps last year, 102. He really, honestly, his best season was his rookie year. It's all been downhill from there. Stanford, Samuels out of Florida State. The dude's extremely raw, so high upside, but again, you don't want to rush guys like that in there. So Will Redmond, he's a special teams guy. So we're probably looking at Sullivan there in the slot. So I'm okay. The secondary is very good. You got pass rush galore. So yeah, the Smith brothers, they're solid. They're not brothers, but you know what I mean. They have the same last name. And maybe a sprinkle Rashawn Gary. Like I said, I'm kind of high on the fact of Kamal Martin. I like kind of the versatility he may give this defense. This defense is going to be fine. This defense played very, very good last year. They should again this year, especially if the offense is going to be kind of slow and plotting like they were a season ago. They were definitely a possession type of team. We are going to win the game. We're going to win the possession game. We're going to hold the ball and we're going to hold it for all game. And that's kind of what they're going to do. Is they try to establish the run and then force the play action. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule. Of course, you got a reasonably tough division with Detroit. You can't sleep on Detroit. Matthew Stafford and company. You can't sleep on the Minnesota Vikings. Yes, secondary is a little bit worse, but Kirk Cousins was actually pretty darn good last year, as well as the Bears, because who knows? Nick Foles might be the savior there. But on top of that, you gotta face the NFC South. Wolf. You gotta face teams like the Falcons, the Saints, the Buccaneers, even Carolina might be a little scary. We don't know what Joe Brady will bring to this team. Look what he did to LSU with one season. And then, fortunately enough, you got the AFC South, which Jacksonville looks like they're in a rebuild. Houston, seemingly after a really bad off season, you would think they'd be worse, but I still think the offense will be pretty darn good. Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill has to regress, right? He played lights out last season. And then the Colts, Phillip Rivers. Well, last time we saw Phillip Rivers, he was throwing 3 picks a game. He was trying to keep up with Jameis Winston, but let's be honest, Jameis Winston, can't keep up with that pace. And their other 2 games are actually reasonably difficult with San Fran, which that sucks. And because we saw what they did to them in the playoffs. And the Eagles, which the Eagles are always a pretty tough customer. They had a pretty good shootout actually this past season. So that would be interesting. But let's go ahead. I'll give you my starters, starting with always Aaron Rodgers. And then we got Aaron Jones because AJ Dillon, he doesn't offer much in the pass game. Josiah DeGuara, who I think I couldn't really pick another tight end. So I just suspect that they're going to use DeGuara a bunch. Devontae Adams, I went with MVS. Alan Lazard was a close second. Mercedes Lewis, I went with the vet, but this could quite honestly be Jay Sternberger. And then the offensive line with David B. We got Jenkins, Lindsey, Turner, and Wagner. Looking at defense, I ended up including Kamal Martin. Like I said, I'm actually pretty high on them using him a lot. So I went with Laurie, Clark, Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, Christian Kirksey, Kamal Martin. Honestly, we could probably, if you think they're not going to use Kamal Martin, probably Rashawn Gary then. Then Alexander, Keen, Sullivan, Amos, and Savage. But let's get to what you're here for. The good stuff. The good stuff. My prediction. Yeah, their schedule is probably average. I mean, there's a few really tough games in there with the AFC or the NFC South. And then of course Minnesota, of course, you can include San Fran, Philadelphia, but I got them going 10-6. This team's still good. It's still Aaron Rodgers, even though they didn't do much, if anything, in the off season. If anything, I think they just stayed the same, and it's not a great thing. But I mean, they were 13-3 last year, so you would, I don't know, if you're anticipating teams got better, then yeah, 10-6, which good on y'all. Should make another run in the playoffs. But that's it for the video. Go ahead and do the YouTube thing. It's always much appreciated, much obliged. And until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.